The hall was alive with cruel laughter. Bright alien lights flickered across the ceiling, reflecting on cages made of steel and strange glowing material. The smell was heavy: oil, smoke, fear. Dozens of alien traders filled the wide chamber, their voices rising in a storm of greedy bargains. Some shouted in guttural tones, others hissed with clicking jaws, but all of them looked at the cages with the same hunger in their eyes. Inside those cages were young alien girls, thin and frightened. Their eyes were hollow, their bodies weak, their hope nearly gone. They were nothing more than property here, merchandise to be bought and sold like tools. The auctioneer, a tall reptilian creature with scales that glistened under the lights, slammed a metal staff against the floor. "Lot number 12. The creature roared, its deep voice echoing. "A fine collection, strong enough for labor, beautiful enough for entertainment. Who will start the bidding?" The crowd leaned forward, eager. And then, someone unexpected walked in. The door creaked open, and a human entered. He was old, gray-haired, his shoulders bent with age. His clothes were simple, patched from years of wear. Compared to the armored merchants and wealthy alien nobles, he looked out of place, fragile, even laughable. The hall fell silent for a moment, then erupted in laughter. "A human? Here?" one of the aliens jeered. "Look at him, he can barely walk," another hissed. "Maybe he wants a servant to cook his meals," someone else mocked. The old man ignored them. His steps were slow but steady as he walked toward the front. His eyes, tired yet sharp, studied the cages. He did not look at the girls as objects. He looked at them as people. That difference made him stand apart in a hall built on cruelty. The auctioneer bared its teeth. "Stranger, do you have credits to waste here?" The old man reached into his worn coat and pulled out a small device. It glowed faintly blue, the universal mark of a valid payment account. "I'll bid," he said simply. His voice was calm, steady, almost too quiet for the chaos of the market. The crowd laughed harder. A weak human spending money here? It was a joke. Yet when the auctioneer called the first price, the old man raised his hand without hesitation. The room paused. The price went higher. Other aliens bid, shouting over one another, but every time, the old man lifted his hand again. His expression did not change. No anger, no pride, no fear. Just quiet determination. The aliens began to take notice. The laughter faded into whispers. "He's serious," one muttered. "Why would a human waste so much on slaves?" The auctioneer narrowed its reptilian eyes. It pushed the numbers higher, trying to force him out. But the old man kept bidding. He did not stop until, finally, the hall fell silent. "Sold," the auctioneer snarled, slamming its staff against the floor. "To the human." The cages opened, and the alien girls were pushed out toward him. They were trembling, their eyes wide with terror. They had expected cruelty, another master, another life of pain. They did not understand why this old human wanted them. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for what he would do. Surely he would chain them, order them, command them. That was the way of this place. But instead, the old man reached into his coat again. He pulled out a small tool and, one by one, touched it to their restraints. The locks clicked open. The glowing cuffs fell to the floor with a metallic clang. The girls froze. Their eyes widened. They looked at each other in shock. No one freed slaves here. No one. The old man's voice was quiet, but in the silence of the hall, everyone heard it. "You're free," he said. The hall erupted in noise. Some shouted in confusion, others in rage. "Madness," a trader spat. "He's throwing away his money." Another hissed, "This is an insult to the system." But the old man did not argue. He only looked at the freed girls and gave a small, kind smile. "You don't belong in chains. Not anymore." The girls' hands trembled as they touched their wrists, feeling the strange emptiness where the cuffs had been. Their minds struggled to understand what was happening. Could it be real? Could freedom truly come from a fragile old human? The aliens in the crowd seethed with anger, but also fear. No one had ever seen this before. One human, alone, had dared to defy the ancient cruelty of their trade. And in that moment, the hall that had once been filled with laughter now filled with unease. The old human's simple act had broken something much larger than chains. It had broken the silence of centuries. The alien girls stood close to him, their eyes still wide, but for the first time, a spark of hope flickered within them. They had no idea what awaited them outside this hall, but they knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. The auctioneer hissed, its staff shaking in rage. "This is not over, human. You'll regret this." But the old man only turned and began to walk away, the freed girls following him. His figure looked small, almost fragile, yet in the eyes of those watching, he seemed larger than any warrior. And deep inside the alien market, a dangerous whisper began to spread. The human bought slaves to set them free. The streets outside the auction hall were narrow, covered in dust and glowing neon signs. Strange alien creatures walked past without care, their eyes avoiding the cages that were being dragged inside. It was a place of noise and cruelty, but at the center of it all walked the old human, slow, steady, and silent, with several alien girls following close behind. Their wrists were free now, but their steps were uncertain. Each of them expected a trick, a trap, something cruel to come. Slaves were never truly freed in this galaxy. Freedom was only a story whispered in the dark, a dream never touched by reality. The girls whispered among themselves in their strange languages. Their voices carried fear, doubt, and confusion. Why would a human, an old one at that, waste so many credits just to open their chains? The old man didn't look back at their whispers. He walked through the crowded streets, ignoring the eyes that followed him. Some aliens laughed, pointing at the strange group. Others scowled, whispering that the human had insulted the trade, that punishment would surely come. But the human walked on, his face calm, as if carrying a secret no one else could see. Finally, he stopped in front of a small transport ship. It was nothing like the shining luxury crafts owned by alien nobles. Its metal was worn, the paint faded, and the engines coughed when they powered on. It was an old man's ship, patched together, barely holding against time. He turned to the girls, his voice quiet but steady. "This is yours now," he said. The girls blinked, not understanding. "You are not property," the old man continued. His tone was gentle, but each word struck like thunder in their hearts. "Not mine. Not anyone's. You are free to go wherever you wish. No one will follow. No one will chain you again." The girls stared at him, silent. One of them trembled, clutching the hem of her simple robe as if afraid to believe. Another whispered, "Why? Why would you do this?" The old man's eyes softened. "Because no one should live in chains," he answered. "Not human, not alien, not anyone." The words sank into their hearts like seeds falling into dry soil. The girls had known only commands and orders. They had been told what to eat, when to sleep, how to walk, how to smile. Now, someone was telling them to choose. To be free. But freedom was terrifying. One girl stepped forward, her voice trembling. We have nowhere to go." The old man nodded. "Then stay, until you are ready. My home is small, but it is safe." Safe. A word so simple, yet so impossible. Could safety really exist for them? The girls followed him into the ship, their fear still clinging to them like shadows. The inside was plain but warm. Old wooden carvings decorated the walls, human relics carried from Earth. A faint smell of tea filled the air. It was not wealth, but it felt alive. The old man moved about the cabin slowly, preparing food. He placed steaming bowls in front of them, not commanding, not watching, simply offering. The girls hesitated. In their lives, meals had always been given as orders, sometimes as rewards, often as punishments. To eat freely, without fear, was strange. The oldest among them lifted her spoon first. The taste was simple, but tears filled her eyes. She whispered, "It's warm." For the first time in years, they ate without being shouted at. For the first time, they sat at a table where no one stood above them with a whip. The old man watched quietly, his tired eyes softening with each bite they took. He did not tell them about his past, or why he came to the market that day. He did not need to. His silence carried a weight that spoke louder than any tale. Outside, however, whispers began to spread. Traders and criminals talked in anger. The human freed them, they said. He disrespected the system. Some laughed at his foolishness, others planned to reclaim the girls and restore order. The galaxy was not kind to those who challenged profit. But inside the ship, the alien girls felt something new stirring in their hearts. Confusion, yes. Fear, yes. But also warmth. One of them finally asked, her voice breaking the silence, "Old One, what will you do with us?" The old man smiled faintly. "Do with you? Nothing. You will do with your lives whatever you wish. My hands are not your chains." The girls looked at each other, lost for words. Their hearts trembled with something unfamiliar, respect. That night, as the ship lifted away from the cruel lights of the market, they huddled together, whispering in low voices. For the first time, their whispers were not about pain or punishment. They spoke of questions. Of hope. Of the strange human who treated them not as things, but as people. And as the stars stretched before them, each girl silently realized. Freedom was no longer a story. It was in his hands. The ship drifted through the quiet void of space, its engines humming softly like a tired heartbeat. Inside, silence lingered. The alien girls sat close together, still unsure if they were truly free, while the old human worked calmly at the controls. The galaxy outside was endless, full of dangers and cruelty, yet the cabin of this worn ship felt strangely different. There were no guards watching, no collars tightening, no cruel laughter. Only the steady hands of an old man steering toward an unknown destination. After hours of travel, the ship descended toward a small, rugged planet. Its skies glowed orange with twin suns, its mountains sharp and shadowed. Unlike the glittering alien capitals, this world seemed forgotten, wild, and quiet. The girls exchanged nervous glances. "Is this another prison?" one whispered. The old man heard her but did not answer. Instead, he guided the ship down into a valley, where a cluster of wooden and stone buildings rested. They looked human-built, simple houses, small farms, and winding paths. Smoke rose gently from chimneys. The ship landed with a soft thud. The old man stood, leaning on his walking stick. "This is home," he said simply. The girls stepped out cautiously, their bare feet touching soft earth instead of cold metal floors. The air was fresh, filled with the smell of soil, smoke, and strange flowers. For a moment, they just stood there, breathing. They had forgotten what air could smell like. The old man guided them to a modest house at the edge of the valley. It was small, its walls rough, its roof patched in places. Yet it felt alive. Vines grew along the edges, wind chimes hung by the door, and carvings of animals, earth animals, decorated the beams. Inside, the house was even simpler. Wooden chairs, a table with scratches from years of use, shelves filled with old human books and tools. A kettle whistled softly over a fire. It was not wealth, not luxury, but it was warm. The girls looked around in wonder. No chains. No cages. Just a home. The old man moved slowly, preparing bedding for them on the floor. "It's not much," he said, "but it's safe. You can rest here." One of the girls frowned. "Why give us a bed? We are used to sleeping on the ground." The old man gave a small smile. "That was slavery. This is different." They exchanged glances again, confused. Words like safe and different felt heavy in their ears. Could such words be true? That night, the girls lay on the bedding, staring at the ceiling. The fire crackled softly, and the old man sat in a chair nearby, reading from an old book. His eyes moved slowly across the faded pages, his lips sometimes whispering words they did not understand. But he did not command them to sleep. He did not order silence. He did not remind them of their worth. For the first time in years, they were free to close their eyes when they wished. And slowly, one by one, they drifted into dreams. The days that followed were strange. The old man showed them the valley. He taught them how to gather food from the gardens, how to carry water from the stream, how to cook over the fire. At first, the girls worked stiffly, as if waiting for punishment. But the punishment never came. When one spilled water, he only chuckled softly and helped her. When another burned the food, he tasted it anyway and said, "Not bad." The alien girls began to watch him closely. His hands were rough and scarred, but they moved with patience. His voice was low, but it carried no cruelty. Every action was slow, deliberate, and kind. One evening, he sat with them outside as the sun set behind the mountains. The sky burned golden red, and the wind carried the scent of wildflowers. The girls sat quietly, unsure if they should speak. Finally, one of them asked, "Why do you live here alone?" The old man stared at the horizon. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, softly, "Because peace is easier to find in small places." The girls lowered their eyes. They had never known peace. The word itself felt like a stranger. But whispers traveled even here. The alien traders were angry. They had lost profit, lost slaves. Rumors spread of the old human who defied the system. Whispers of revenge grew sharper with each passing day. The girls sensed it. They saw shadows in the old man's eyes when he checked the sky, when he locked the doors at night. He never told them, but they knew. Danger was coming. And yet, even as fear returned, something new burned in their hearts. One night, as they sat around the fire, one of the younger girls spoke. "We were taught that humans are weak, that they do not survive long in harsh places." Another added, "But this human, he is different. He gave us freedom when he could have bought power." The eldest among them whispered, "He gave us something greater than freedom. He gave us a home." The old man, half asleep in his chair, opened one eye and smiled faintly. He did not speak. He didn't need to. In their hearts, the alien girls realized something no chain had ever allowed them to believe. Perhaps they were not worthless. Perhaps they were not slaves. Perhaps they were people. And slowly, the valley became more than a shelter. It became a seed of hope. The valley was quiet, but peace never lasts long in a galaxy ruled by greed. For weeks, the old human and the freed alien girls lived in calm rhythm. Days passed with cooking, tending the gardens, and watching the twin suns set behind the mountains. The girls began to laugh softly at night, their fear loosening little by little. They still moved carefully, like people learning to walk again, but the weight of chains had started to lift. Yet, outside the valley, whispers were turning into storms. The slave market had lost profit, and profit was power. Traders raged when they heard how the old human had stolen their merchandise, not by force, but by freeing it. To them, this was worse than theft. It was an insult, a direct challenge to their system. Around smoky tables in alien dens, voices hissed with anger. "No one defies the trade. He will regret it. We will take back what he freed, and make an example of him." The plan was simple: send hunters, bring the girls back, and crush the old man's spirit. Back in the valley, the old human felt it before it arrived. He had lived long enough to know how greed worked. Some evenings, when the alien girls laughed near the fire, he would glance at the dark sky with weary eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he checked the old rifle mounted above the door, a relic from wars long past. The girls noticed. One night, the eldest asked quietly, "Why do you look at the sky as if it is hunting you?" The old man sighed, his voice rough. "Because one day, it will." The words hung heavy in the air. The girls fell silent, their joy dimming. Fear, their old companion, returned to their eyes. But this time, it was different. This time, they were not powerless. The first sign came at dawn. The valley birds fell silent. The ground trembled faintly, as if metal claws scratched against stone in the distance. The old man stepped outside, his weathered face calm, though his eyes were sharp. On the horizon, faint lights shimmered, the glow of ships approaching. "They found us," he whispered. The girls gathered behind him, their hearts pounding. Memories of cages, whips, and chains returned like ghosts. Their breaths quickened, their bodies shaking. The old man turned to them. His voice was steady, though soft. "You have two choices. Hide, and I will face them alone, or stand, and decide your own fate." The words struck them deeply. Decide your own fate. Such a thing had never been given to them before. For a moment, silence. Then the youngest girl, voice trembling but firm, said, "We will not go back." Another added, "If they take you, they take us too. We won't let that happen." The old man studied them. Their fear was still there, but something stronger had begun to rise. Courage. He nodded once. Then stand. By nightfall, the hunters arrived. 3 ships hovered above the valley, engines growling like beasts. From their doors, armored figures stepped out, aliens with weapons, their eyes glowing cold. They marched down the slopes, confident, sneering at the thought of capturing a frail human and a group of trembling slaves. But when they reached the valley floor, they found something unexpected. The girls stood in front of the house, shoulders squared, no longer hiding. Their hands gripped farming tools, hoes, axes, even sharpened sticks. They were crude, weak compared to alien rifles, but their stance was unbroken. The hunters laughed. Slaves holding sticks? Pathetic. The old human stepped forward, his walking stick in hand, but his eyes like stone. They are not slaves, he said calmly. Not anymore. The leader of the hunters sneered. Old man, you can barely stand. Step aside, or we'll break you before their eyes. The human's grip tightened. His voice, though tired, carried thunder. Try. The hunters advanced, but the valley seemed to breathe with the defiance standing before them. The alien girls did not run. Their hands shook, their hearts raced, but they held their ground. And in that moment, something shifted. The hunters, who had always seen slaves as weak, suddenly saw eyes filled with fire. They realized these girls were no longer property. They were people who had tasted freedom, and people who had chosen to fight for it. The hunters hesitated. Just for a second. But in battle, a second can be everything. The old man moved, faster than his age should allow. The rifle above his door roared, its echo shaking the valley. The first hunter fell, armor cracked by human steel. The girls shouted, charging with their tools, striking at the others with desperation fueled by freedom. The hunters staggered, unprepared for resistance, unprepared for slaves who fought like warriors. The valley filled with chaos, shouts, smoke, the clash of crude tools against advanced weapons. But through it all, one truth became clear. The old human was not alone. By the time the sun rose, the hunters were gone, some limping back to their ships, others carried away by silence. The valley was scarred, but still standing. The girls, bruised and trembling, looked at each other with wide eyes. They had fought. They had resisted. And they had won. The old man stood among them, weary but proud. His voice was quiet. This is only the beginning. They will come again. Stronger. The eldest girl straightened her back. Then we will be ready. For the first time, their chains were not only broken in body, they were broken in spirit. The galaxy had thought them weak, but in this small valley, strength had been born. And as the suns rose over the mountains, the whisper of rebellion began to travel once more. The human freed slaves, and they fought back. The valley was quiet again, but the silence no longer carried peace. It was the silence after a storm, heavy and full of questions. The hunters were gone, defeated, yet the shadow of their return hung over the small shelter like a cloud. The alien girls sat together outside the old man's home, tending to their bruises and cuts from the fight. Their tools, once only for farming, lay nearby, stained with the proof of what they had dared to do. For the first time in their lives, they had stood against those who claimed to own them. And they had survived. But victory brought with it something unexpected, feelings they could not explain. The old man moved slowly among them, bandaging wounds with rough but gentle hands. His fingers trembled with age, but every touch carried care. He asked no payment, gave no commands. He simply saw their pain and chose to ease it. One girl whispered, "Why does he keep helping us? He owes us nothing." Another answered softly, maybe this is what humans are." The words stirred something dangerous in their hearts. Gratitude was one thing. Loyalty was another. But what was this warmth growing every time his tired eyes softened at them? What was this weight in their chests when they thought of losing him? That night, they gathered by the fire. The flames flickered against their faces, shadows dancing across the walls of the small house. The old man sat apart, staring into the fire, lost in thoughts he never shared. The girls exchanged glances, each waiting for another to speak. Finally, the youngest broke the silence. You risked your life for us. Twice now. Why? The old man did not look at her. His voice was low, almost like a memory. Because once, someone did the same for me. The girls leaned forward, listening. He rarely spoke of his past. He sighed. Long ago, I was young, and I was foolish. I lived on a world where war came suddenly. Soldiers, fire, chains. I thought it was the end. But there was a woman. She was not strong, not rich, not powerful. She was just kind. She saved me when she had no reason to. I never forgot. His eyes softened, the firelight reflecting in them. When I saw you in that hall, I saw myself. I could not walk away. The girls lowered their heads. His words pierced deeper than any command ever could. They had been called worthless, treated as objects, but to him, they were reflections of something precious, something worth saving. And with that truth, their hearts broke open. In the days that followed, tension grew not from outside threats, but from within. The girls began to notice how they looked at him differently. They found comfort in his presence, safety in his words, warmth in his smile. Gratitude twisted into affection, and affection into something heavier. But none dared to say it aloud. They argued quietly among themselves. He is too old, one said. His time is short. But his spirit is strong, another whispered. Stronger than anyone I've known. He freed us. That is all. We should not ask for more. Yet why does my heart race when he looks at me? Their whispers became sharper, sometimes breaking into small fights. Each girl feared the same thing, that her heart was betraying her, that she was reaching for something forbidden. The old man noticed their unease, though he did not understand it fully. He thought it was fear of the hunter's return. One evening, he gathered them by the fire again. You must prepare, he said. His voice was steady, though his body was weary. They will come back, stronger. I cannot fight forever. One day, I will fall. And when that day comes, you must be ready to stand without me. The words struck them harder than any weapon. Without him? The thought burned their chests. Freedom without him felt empty, like a sky without stars. The eldest girl spoke firmly, her voice breaking slightly. We do not want freedom without you. We want freedom with you. The old man froze, his eyes lifting to meet hers. For the first time, he saw it, the emotion in their eyes, the unspoken truth in their hearts. And it terrified him. That night, he sat alone outside, staring at the stars. His hands gripped his walking stick tightly. He had freed them to give them life, not to tie their futures to his dying body. He was old, broken by years, a shadow of what he once was. They were young, with lifetimes ahead of them. Fool, he muttered to himself. You should have left them. You should not have let them stay. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. He could no longer imagine the valley without their laughter, without their voices in the evening, without their presence by his side. Somewhere along the way, their chains had not only broken, their lives had become tangled with his. The conflict was not only in their hearts. It was in his too. Inside the house, the girls whispered in the dark. The eldest clutched her blanket, her voice firm. He thinks he saved us. But perhaps it is us who must save him. The youngest nodded, tears in her eyes. We will not let him face this alone. If he gave us freedom, then we will give him something greater. What? Another asked. The eldest looked toward the door where he sat under the stars, his silhouette lonely against the night sky. Her voice was steady, filled with a courage none of them had known before. Love. The valley no longer felt safe. For weeks after the first attack, the alien girls kept watch with the old human. They took turns at the hilltop, their eyes scanning the skies for ships. The peace they once felt in the warm evenings was now mixed with tension. Every sound of engines in the distance made their hearts race. Every shadow crossing the twin suns looked like a threat. The old human knew it was only a matter of time. The hunters had been humiliated, and humiliation demanded revenge. Traders and slavers would never allow such defiance to spread. If one old man could free slaves and protect them, others might try. That could not be allowed. And so the storm came. It started with thunder in the skies. Heavy warships descended, far larger than the hunters who had come before. Their hulls burned with red lights, their engines shaking the valley as they hovered above. Dust rose in violent clouds, and the ground trembled as metal feet touched the soil. This was no small raid. This was punishment. The alien girls stood by the house, their tools and makeshift weapons in hand. They trembled, but not from chains, this time it was from choice. Fear clung to them, yes, but so did determination. The old man stepped forward, leaning on his walking stick. His face was calm, though his body was weary. "Stay behind me," he said. But the eldest shook her head. "Not this time. We stand with you." Their voices were quiet, but unshakable. The enemy commander marched forward, a towering alien in heavy armor, eyes glowing under a visor. Around him, dozens of soldiers formed a line, weapons humming with deadly energy. He laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "One old human, a few broken girls, and you dare resist the trade? You should have died quietly." The old man met his gaze. "Better to die free than live as slaves." The commander sneered. "Then you will all die." He raised his hand. The soldiers moved. The battle erupted. Bolts of energy tore through the valley, burning the soil. The old man's rifle cracked, its echo louder than the alien guns. Each shot struck true, his aim steady despite his age. The girls rushed forward with cries of defiance, striking with axes, blades, and sharpened tools. They fought not with strength, but with fury born of stolen years. The aliens expected weakness. Instead, they found resistance. One girl leapt onto a soldier's back, slamming her blade between the gaps of his armor. Another swung her axe, sparks flying as it clashed against metal. They fought like people who had nothing left to lose, and everything to protect. The old man moved among them, his rifle blazing, his stick cracking against helmets when his ammo ran low. His breath came hard, his body trembled, but he did not fall. Each time he staggered, the girls formed a wall around him, their voices crying out, "Stand! Stand with us!" The valley became a storm of fire and smoke. But numbers were against them. More soldiers poured from the ships, their weapons cutting down the valley's defenses. One by one, the girls were knocked back, their weapons breaking under the weight of alien steel. The old man bled from a wound in his shoulder, his breath shallow, his rifle empty. The commander stepped forward, towering above him. "Pathetic," he hissed. "A frail human and his pets, thinking they can defy an empire." The old man raised his head, his voice hoarse but strong. "Not pets. People." The soldiers laughed. The commander lifted his blade to strike. But before it could fall, the eldest girl threw herself forward, shielding the human with her body. The blade cut across her arm, but she did not flinch. Her eyes burned with fire. "If you kill him, you kill us all." The soldiers hesitated. Never before had they seen slaves choose to stand in front of their master, not in chains but in defiance. The commander snarled. "You would die for him." The girl's voice rang out, steady despite the pain. "No. We live because of him." Her words spread like lightning through the valley. The other girls rose again, wounded but unbroken, surrounding the human with their battered weapons raised. Their voices joined hers in one cry. "He gave us freedom. Now we give him everything." Something shifted in the air. The soldiers faltered, their discipline breaking under the weight of a truth they could not comprehend. And in that moment of hesitation, the old man raised his rifle once more. With the last of his strength, he fired, not at the commander, but at the warship above. The shot tore into its engine, and flames erupted. The ship staggered, crashing into the mountainside with a roar that shook the valley. The soldiers panicked. Some fled. Others fell under the furious strikes of the freed girls. The commander cursed, retreating as his troops scattered. The punishment had turned into humiliation once more. When the smoke cleared, the valley stood in ruins. The soil was scorched, the house broken, the air thick with ash. But the old man still breathed, and the girls still stood. They were battered, blooded, trembling, but alive. Together. The old man sank to his knees, exhausted. The girls rushed to him, holding him up with their arms. His voice was faint, but his words carried the weight of mountains. "This is only the beginning," he whispered. The eldest girl met his gaze, tears burning in her eyes. "Then we will face the galaxy with you. Always." And in that moment, something unshakable was born, not chains of ownership, but bonds of choice, forged in fire and blood. The breaking point had come. And they had not broken. The valley lay in ruins. Smoke curled from the broken house, and the soil bore scars where fire and weapons had struck. Yet amid the destruction, life remained. The old human sat on a fallen beam, his breath ragged, his body heavy with pain, but his eyes still alive. Around him, the freed alien girls tended to each other, binding wounds, comforting with whispered words. For the first time in their lives, they were not captives. For the first time, they had fought for something, no, for someone, and they had won. But victory had not erased the truth. The galaxy would come again. Traders, soldiers, hunters, the system would not rest until the example of one old human was erased. The girls knew this. And yet, as they looked at the human, leaning against the ruined wall with blood still staining his shirt, none of them felt regret. Instead, they felt something stronger than fear. Days passed as they rebuilt what little they could. The valley was scarred, but it was still theirs. The house was patched together with stone and wood, the fields replanted with trembling hands. Each night, they sat together around the fire, and the silence between them grew heavier, not from fear, but from words left unspoken. The old man sensed it. He saw the way their eyes lingered on him, the way they moved closer when he staggered, the way their voices softened when they spoke his name. He had freed them to give them life, not to bind them again. Yet somehow, their freedom had brought them back to him. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, he gathered them. His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. "You owe me nothing," he said. "I freed you because it was right. You should take your freedom and go, before the galaxy finds this place again." The words cut deeper than any blade. The eldest girl stepped forward, her eyes shining in the firelight. "Do you think freedom means leaving the one who gave it to us? Do you think we are still slaves, waiting for orders?" The old man shook his head. "No. That is why you must choose." The girls looked at each other, their breaths trembling. For a moment, silence. Then the youngest stepped forward, her voice fragile but firm. "Then we choose you." The old man froze. His heart trembled, more shaken than in any battle. "Me?" "Yes," another said, her tone stronger. "We have known cages, chains, cruelty. And we have known you. You gave us safety, kindness, a home. We do not want to wander into the galaxy. We want to stay where we are more than free, we are loved." The word struck him harder than any wound. He looked at them, at their scarred hands, their determined eyes, their trembling but unbroken spirits, and he realized the truth. They were no longer frightened girls. They were no longer property. They were no longer victims. They were his family. The days that followed were filled with rebuilding, but something had changed. The girls worked not as dependents, but as partners. They laughed louder, stood taller, and carried their tasks with pride. Where once they had whispered of chains, now they whispered of futures. At night, they sat closer to him, their shoulders brushing his, their hands sometimes reaching for his without fear. What began as gratitude had become something deeper, an unshakable bond born not of ownership, but of choice. And the old man, though weary and scarred, felt something he had not known in decades, belonging. But the galaxy still whispered. Traders raged at their defeat, hunters nursed their wounds, and governments debated how one old human had broken the rules of empire. Rumors spread of slaves who stood with their liberator, of girls who chose loyalty over fear, of love blooming where chains once held. The story grew larger than the valley, carried by frightened whispers and hopeful hearts. And somewhere in the dark corners of the galaxy, others began to wonder. If one human could do this, what might happen if more did the same? One night, as the stars burned bright above, the old man sat outside, his tired eyes watching the endless sky. The eldest girl came to him, her steps soft, her voice quiet. "You still fear the galaxy will come," she said. He nodded. "It always comes." She knelt beside him, taking his hand. Her touch was gentle but firm. Then let it come. We are no longer slaves who hide. We are people who fight. With you. For you. The old man looked at her, his throat tight. And if I fall? Her eyes softened, filled with both sadness and fire. Then we will rise. Because you did not give us freedom just to run, you gave us the strength to live. And now, we give you the strength to stay. Tears touched the corners of his eyes. For a moment, the old human who had carried nothing but loss and silence felt something impossible, hope. The valley slept under starlight, but within its walls, a new truth had taken root. The alien girls were no longer captives. The old man was no longer alone. Together, they had defied chains, defied cruelty, defied an empire. And together, they had found something greater.